It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Hopes of progress towards peace in Ukraine as Zelensky says he's ready to move forward with Trump's ceasefire plan.
So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out. I thought that one would have been gone quicker. We did 8. I thought that would have been an easier one, but I think we're making progress.
The Chancellor boosts the minimum wage as she puts the finishing touches to tomorrow's make or break budget. We'll be live in Downing Street to assess what Rachel Reeves' announcements mean for you and her own political future. Also tonight, a furious response from lawyers over plans to scrap trial by jury for all but the most serious cases. A man is arrested over a mountain of rubbish illegally dumped next to a river in Oxfordshire. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That is coming up in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. We begin tonight with growing hopes of a breakthrough in talks to end the war in Ukraine. The country's President, Volodymyr Zelensky, says he's ready to move forward with the framework of a ceasefire deal brokered by the United States. He's now seeking an urgent meeting to work through outstanding issues with Donald Trump. But although the US president said tonight that tremendous progress has been made, he insisted he will only meet Mr. Zelensky and Russia's President Vladimir Putin when the deal is final or in its final stages. And it's still far from clear if the proposed agreement will win the backing of Russia, which has warned that it's unlikely to accept any watering down of an understanding that it reached with President Trump earlier in the year. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi has tonight's first report.
This is the backdrop to the latest round of American diplomacy aimed at ending the war started by Moscow. In the shadow of this carnage, after another barrage of Russian missiles and drones, there's deep skepticism that Vladimir Putin will agree to call off his war machine.
I don't believe in the peace plan. Putin won't stop until he finishes us off.
They write one thing and do another. The war will not stop. It seems to me that no negotiations will work.
The reality of near daily strikes and fighting stands in stark contrast to the diplomatic language of a peace plan. But there is the appearance of momentum. Ukraine says it's agreed to the essence of a proposal and wants to move forward.
Ukraine has the framework developed by our teams in Geneva. That framework is on the table, and we are ready to move forward together with the United States of America, with personal engagement of President Trump and with Europe.
In Washington, Donald Trump took part in the traditional Thanksgiving turkey pardon. The White House says tremendous progress has been made towards a peace deal.
I've also ended 8 wars in 9 months, and we're working on that final war. It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there. 25,000 soldiers, Ukraine, Russia. In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out. I thought that one would have been gone quicker.
But the US president appears to be hedging his bets, saying on Truth Social that he won't meet with either Zelensky or Putin until a deal is struck. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, welcomed the renewed diplomacy.
The initial draft of the 28-point plan included points that were not acceptable, but also some very important elements that will be essential for a just and lasting peace.
The Russian president has yet to comment publicly on the revised plan. Putin arrived in Kyrgyzstan as his diplomats met US officials in Abu Dhabi. But the Kremlin's already signalled the new document is almost certainly unacceptable, saying it departs from what Moscow believes was agreed during the Trump-Putin meeting in Alaska earlier this year.
We have channels of communication open with our American colleagues. They're being used. If the spirit and letter of Anchorage are erased from the key understandings we formalised, then of course the situation will be fundamentally different. But so far, no one has officially communicated anything to us.
The US's original 28-point plan has now been fine-tuned. But finding common ground between Ukraine's red lines and Russia's maximalist demands to end this bloody war will not be easy. Alex Rossi, Sky News.
Let's go live to Washington then, and our US correspondent Mark Stone. The Thanksgiving holiday almost upon the president, Mark, as he sends Witkoff to meet Putin again. But is fine-tuning all that is left for those discussions with the Ukrainians?
Well, maybe with the Ukrainians, but then the more fine-tuning they do with the Ukrainians, the more difficult it becomes to get the deal over the line with the Russians, if the Russians are even interested in a deal at all that isn't a total capitulation for Ukraine. Look, Anna, we began the day today, as always in Washington, playing catch-up because of the time zone with what's going on in Europe, and it was clear that the Ukrainians were at a stage where they were prepared to get Zelensky to meet Trump as soon as possible. It was briefed to us and put on X as well that Zelensky was prepared to come to the United States. There was then a suggestion that they thought that the optics of him going to Mar-a-Lago, where Trump is about to depart for the holiday weekend, and meeting there and signing a deal, meeting Trump's deadline, that would look very good. It would give Zelensky credit in Trump's book. But it appears, as you saw from that tweet or that social media post in Alex's report from Donald Trump, that he is not ready yet. There is some more work to be done, and I think what that means is they're clear that the Russians are not there yet. And on that, a remarkable reveal from Bloomberg. Our colleagues at Bloomberg have got hold of what they say is a recording between Steve Witkoff and senior advisors to President Putin a month or two ago, which gives a fascinating insight into the sort of conversations that are going on behind the scenes between the Americans and the Russians, with Steve Witkoff advising the Russians how they can appeal to Donald Trump, telling the Russians get Putin to compliment Donald Trump on the Gaza deal. The 20-point plan for that worked quite well, so why don't we come up with a similar one for Russia-Ukraine? It kind of looks like the Americans, Witkoff is trying to school the Russians in how to deal with his principal, Donald Trump. Fascinating stuff, embarrassing as well. The Kremlin have not responded. The White House has not responded, although Kirill Dmitriev, close aide of Vladimir Putin, has responded on X, replying to the Bloomberg report, saying simply one word: fake.
Mark, updating us there from Washington. Thank you very much indeed. Now, ahead of her budget tomorrow, the Chancellor has said she's focused on cutting the cost of living, reducing NHS waiting lists and cutting the cost of debt. But Rachel Reeves is under pressure after raising expectations of tax hikes to pay for her plans and to try to plug the hole in the nation's finances. So, what can we expect tomorrow? Well, detail on those tax rises is scant, but here's what we do know so far about the Chancellor's plans. Tonight, Rachel Reeves announced the national living wage and the national minimum wage will be raised. NHS prescription charges in England will be frozen for the second year in a row. Rail fares are also set to be frozen for the first time in 30 years. The state pension is set to rise by more than £550 a year from April under the triple lock. There's to be a crackdown on benefits fraud, tackling inaccurate universal credit claims. The Health Secretary said today that the government will expand taxes on sugary drinks to include milkshakes and pre-packaged coffees. And there will also be a tourist tax, meaning visitors have to pay to stay in the area overnight, although it will be down to local mayors whether to actually apply it. So, some detail released already, but not so much on how Rachel Reeves plans to pay for her plans against the backdrop of a faltering economy. Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been taking a look at the key challenges facing the Chancellor.
That was a year ago. That was the budget where Rachel Reeves said this was going to be the big tax-raising budget. She wasn't going to have to come back for much more. How have things changed so much in just 12 and a bit months? Well, The main thing you've got to know about this, OK, there are two factors here. The first of them is the fact that the economy isn't doing as well as a lot of people had hoped. This is just showing you productivity, which is kind of the best measure of how well off, how much better off we're getting each year. It's our bang for our buck across the economy. And up until 2008, it looked like that was kind of going perpetually higher. But then, as we all know, it didn't go higher. So it's basically flatlined or gone up really weakly since then. You can see the pandemic there. And the gap between where we might have been and where we are now is 23%. We are 23% poorer than it looked like we might have been. And that feeds into everything else. So that's 23% less in tax revenue, which means a hole in the budget. So that's number one part of the hole, and we're going to hear more from the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, about that. The second part of the hole is a year ago or so, Rachel Reeves had all these plans about cutting welfare, and a lot of them haven't happened. And as a result of them, these U-turns, the welfare bill is forecast, this is forecast off into the future, is forecast to carry on rising. And so those two things together, extra spending on the one hand and less money coming in because the economy's not doing as well, they're the two main dynamics overshadowing this budget, raising the question, what does the government do about it? Well, the main answer, we suspect, is going to be something economists call fiscal drag, which I know is terrible terminology. I'm going to illustrate how it actually works, though, because this is really important. It means basically you're raising extra money without having to raise the rate of income tax. That's showing you the median income, so average salary, average incomes across the economy before tax, going back the last few years. And this is the critical thing, is the personal allowance. That's basically the point at which you start having to pay tax on your income. So anything below that line, that's untaxed income. Anything above the line, that's tax. That's the tax, basically, that you have to pay. And here's the key thing. Look at that line. Under the coalition government, they increased that quite a lot. And then, in the last few years, that has been left flat. And as it's been left flat, have a look at this. As that's been left flat, the gap between these two has got bigger. The amount that we have to pay on our earnings in tax has got bigger. And if, as is expected, Rachel Reeves decides to leave that flat, so to freeze the personal allowance for another few years, look at what happens here. Even if our earnings go up, the amount that we're squeezed by taxes goes up. And just to kind of underline this, back in 2019, 52% of income of the average earner was taxed. If that continues, it's going to be 64%. So that brings in quite a lot of extra money because we are going to be paying more in tax because of fiscal drag. But the question is that Rachel Reeves is facing, how does she raise the other money that basically will fill that hole in her budget?
Ed Conway there. Well, let's go live then to 11 Downing Street, the Chancellor's official residence, and our deputy political editor, Sam Coates. Sam, at last, you hear the nation cry out, but this certainly is a moment of peril for the Chancellor politically.
Oh, yes, that's absolutely right. You see all the lights in the building behind me, people coming in and out of the door of number 11. They're working late into the night. This is a moment of jeopardy, not just for Rachel Reeves, but for everybody who serves in the government that she's a part of. The challenges that she will confront in tomorrow's budget, I think, have been evident for maybe 6 months, maybe longer, but the solutions that they've come up with have been thrown together in a matter of weeks, days even, and that's why it feels like such a moment of jeopardy. Rachel Reeves will tell the nation, as you were just saying, Anna, that this budget is about helping the NHS, helping with the cost of living and reducing the cost of borrowing. Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. Really, at the heart of this budget is filling the 20 to 30 billion pound black hole that's opened up since she stood at the dispatch box a year ago. A black hole caused by Labour MP's refusal to embrace welfare reform and the fact that she needs to borrow slightly less. She's been taking too much risks with the public finances, and she'll have to do it through tax. Maybe a dozen or more tax rises. One piece of advice for viewers, look at the fine print tomorrow very, very closely. What year do taxes come in? Who exactly do they target? I suspect that the detail won't emerge for some time after this budget. There are two audiences, though, that really matter to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. Labour MPs and the market. They want stability from both. There isn't much talk these days from these guys in the buildings behind me of growth anymore. We're expecting growth to be downgraded. If they can fix the foundations and just do that, I think the people in the buildings behind me will be pretty satisfied with what they've done.
Sam, very busy day ahead for you. I know you'll be alongside Ed Conway, Beth Rigby, all hosted by Sophie Ridge as well, all from 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So do stay tuned. It will be truly fascinating to see where we end up. Now, barristers have warned that government plans to scrap jury trials in all but the most serious cases could destroy the criminal justice system. In an effort to clear a backlog in the courts, the Justice Secretary David Lammy has suggested that juries need only be present in trials for murder, manslaughter and rape.
To be honest, I find it heartbreaking, shocking, and I'm afraid shameful that David Lammy, the person who was such an eloquent advocate for our jury system over the last few years, one of the most powerful voices speaking as to the fairness of outcomes of trials where juries sit compared to the alternatives, is now going to smash things up. When we had a real emergency, a real crisis in 2020, when jury trial effectively stopped because of COVID, and this sort of proposal was being discussed, these were his words. Jury trials are a fundamental part of our democratic settlement. Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. And he told the government to pull their finger out and and those were his words, and to put the necessary resources in. And the same is true today.
Well, let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig. Controversial, John.
Massively controversial. There's a huge outcry from the legal profession, both barristers and solicitors. But the government is defiant and says it's absolutely vital to clear that backlog. And also, they claim that some criminals are, in the words of Sarah Sackman, the courts minister, gaming the system by choosing trial by jury in order to increase the chances of proceedings collapsing. As she says, drug dealers and career criminals are laughing in the dock, knowing cases can take years to come to trial. And she also says that victims of severe sexual assault are sometimes routinely told it could take 4 years for their cases to come to court. Now, the reason there is such fury at what is being proposed now is because Mr. Lammy has gone much further than an independent report by Sir Brian Leveson, best known for his press inquiry, recommended earlier this year. He suggested non-jury trials for crimes with a sentence of up to 3 years. Now, Mr. Lammy has increased that to 5 years, meaning that all that's left, really, for jury trials is rape, murder, manslaughter, and what the government is calling public interest trials. Now, the Conservatives have bitterly attacked this proposal. Kemi Badenoch has said this decision risks fairness, undermines public trust, and she has talked about how Mr. Lammy used to agree. Well, indeed he did. He was very outspoken back in 2020, as we've heard. The right to trial by your fellow citizens is fundamental to our democracy. And Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has said Mr. Lammy should be getting the courts sitting around the clock. And he says the government's turned down extra court sitting days. There's going to be a huge row about this. It will require legislation. The government may struggle to get it through Parliament, particularly the House of Lords, packed with judges, barristers and all sorts of legal eagles. So this is the start of a massive row that will continue for some time, and the government faces a battle to get these proposals through Parliament.
John, thank you very much indeed. Aid agencies say flooding is compounding the misery of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza whose tents have been inundated or washed away. The UN is accusing Israeli authorities of severely restricting shelter supplies from getting into Gaza, but Israel insists it's working on what it calls a dedicated response to the winter. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons has more from Jerusalem.
Well, the rain here in this region has been significant. Starting in the early hours of Tuesday morning, there was a thunderstorm here in Jerusalem that then led to hailstones battering against windows and water cascading along the roads here. And those images of flooding have been seen from across this country and into the West Bank and Gaza. Now, in Israel and the West Bank, the greatest damage, I think, was probably from floodwater going through ravines and along some of those roads, which swept away vehicles and in some cases imperiled the lives of civilians, a family, had to be rescued from their vehicle. But the greater crisis is obviously happening in Gaza and brewing there as well, because there, after the devastation wreaked by war, the drainage systems have either been demolished or blocked by rubble. So a lot of that floodwater has nowhere to go. Instead, it cascades through refugee camps, in some cases destroying the tents in which people are living, and also flooding through medical facilities. You see images of dirty brown water simply gushing through hospital facilities. And the really troubling aspect for the Gazans is that as winter approaches, the conditions are likely to get much worse.
Adam Parsons there. A man has been arrested in connection with the large-scale illegal tipping of waste in Oxfordshire. The 39-year-old from the Guildford area was arrested following cooperation between the Environment Agency and the South East Regional Organised Crime Unit. Last week, the Environment Agency declared the 40-foot-high mountain of waste near Kidlington a critical incident. Heathrow's proposal for a third runway has been chosen as the government's preferred option for expanding the airport. The £49 billion plan would see part of the M25 moved to make room. The government turned down proposals for a shorter runway, saying it would mean the compulsory purchase of more homes. Graham Linehan has been found not guilty of harassment of a trans activist, but found guilty of criminal damage to their mobile phone. The Father Ted co-creator denied both charges linked to a confrontation at a conference in London in October 2024.
I am very pleased by today's verdict. The judge found me and the women who gave evidence on my behalf to be credible, honest witnesses, and said that my actions were not criminal and did not constitute harassment.
The media regulator Ofcom has proposed new guidelines for social media companies to better protect women and girls online. And the move comes as female athletes in particular have been speaking out against the hatred they're exposed to. They include the England star Jess Carter, who was repeatedly targeted with racist abuse during this summer's Euros. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris has more.
During the Euros, the racism sent to Jess Carter ignited calls for action. The Lioness powerfully revealing to me immediately after winning the trophy how online hate nearly forced her to quit.
Without the fans, my family, my teammates, I'm not sure that I'd ever had the courage to go back on the pitch and play again. I'm not really someone who struggles with, the hate that they receive, because everyone's going to have their opinion. But this tournament's been really tough, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come back on the pitch and do me. And every one of those fans, I'm not ever going to be able to show my thanks enough.
But 4 months on, while Carter's been adding to her trophy collection in America, still no sign of a fresh impetus to tackle abuse from social media platforms. Now Ofcom is stepping in. The boss of the communications regulator telling me how tech firms need to make it safer online, particularly for women and girls, and particularly for sports stars.
I think we're going to lose talent in sport. Lots of places where women in particular feel that, if they go out there in a public role, they just get abused, and sometimes the toll on them and their families is not something that they can manage.
Ofcom has now advised the likes of X and Instagram to include prompts telling users to reconsider harmful messages, stopping payments if posts promote misogynistic abuse and sexual violence, and ensuring For You recommended posts have more perspectives and are not toxic echo chambers.
It's not about curtailing anyone's freedom of expression. It's about nudges and prompts. It's about better reporting. It's about clearer privacy settings. All of these ideas have come from experts or victims or survivors themselves.
There is an urgency. Sky News recently revealed suspected online hate crimes referred to police have quadrupled this season in English football. And for former England star Leanne Sanderson, the Ofcom recommendations are lacking.
I feel so passionately about there needing to be online identification to have an account, because someone like myself has had death threats. I'm a woman of colour, I'm gay. There's loads of things that people can't handle, and that's where it comes to me. It's not even about my job.
The job for tech firms, not just prioritising profit, but protecting users. And if moves to reduce toxicity and trolling fall short, Ofcom says it will ask the government to strengthen online safety laws, but not for 2 years, when action is being demanded now to clean up their sites from vicious abuse. Rob Harris, Sky News.
Well, finally tonight, Sir Keir Starmer has apologised to a head teacher after leading pupils in a dance craze that had been banned at the school. The Prime Minister was visiting Welland Academy in Peterborough when he got himself in hot water thanks to the viral 6-7 move.
6-7, let's have a look. Oh, it's not on the same page.
6-7. Yeah. 6-7. Everybody. 6-7. Are you doing page 6-7?
We're not over that yet. We're not over that. Still very much a thing. She's put it up 6-7. What page?
You got it.
Show me a question.
See you later. That's a bit wild.
Stuff for that lovely 6-7. You know, children get into trouble for saying that in maths school.
Oh, do they?
So,
right.
yeah, they're lovely children in year 2.
Yeah, there we are. Sorry about that.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's fine.
I didn't start it, miss.
Oh, lovely. That had him told, didn't it? Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we will take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers and the press preview. Eve of budget, obviously. Tonight, joined by the political commentator Adam Bolton and the journalist and broadcaster Sonia Soda. So what will we be talking about? This on the front page of The Guardian. For example, its headline, Reeves vows to tackle the cost of living crisis in a decisive budget for Labour. That and more stories too, back in a moment.